In part 9 of our series on learning how to play Osprey game Zona Alfa, we're going to discuss wounds, pins, how to rally your models, and how to use medkits. Let's discuss wounds. Most units in Zona Alfa have only one wound, which means everything but the largest and most dangerous enemies can be taken out with a single shot or a good hit to the head. Now, a wounded single wound model isn't necessarily dead, but they are placed out of action. To show someone's placed out of action, lay the figure face down on the table and mark them with the appropriate token if you want to, say something like that. A model that has been wounded and put out of action and is not healed before the end of this mission, let's say someone comes up and rescues them with a medkit, which we'll talk about later, they'll have to roll on the battle scars table at the end of the mission to determine if the injury is lasting. This normally takes effect if you're playing multi-game campaigns. Now, a one wound and out of action model that is wounded again in a different round of combat while still out of action, let's say like he's out of action and he shoots him again, is considered permanently dead. If you're playing a campaign, you'll have to replace them, and any equipment, weapons, or armor they have goes into the crew pool for other crew members to use. Now let's discuss multiple wound models. When starting a Zona Alfa game, only your crew leader, the model you select to represent the gang in the zone, will start out with 2 wounds. Other crew members can achieve multiple wounds during the course of a campaign with enough experience, but to start with, the boss is the guy with the most wounds. Now, when a multi-wound model receives their first wound, mark the model's stat sheet or place an appropriate token. So, let's say this guy shoots the leader of that guy. I'll use this to say, hey, this 2-wound model has 1 wound against them. The wounded model remains in the game, but functions at a reduced capacity, moving at half their normal movement rate and fighting at half their normal combat ability rounded up. Also, there's a -1 penalty to their will stat. This 2-wound rule keeps named characters in the game without making them invincible. Now let's discuss pins and rallying. Now this individual has a pin counter against him. Let's say he made a shot against him, it's deflected, he failed his will save, so now he has a pin counter. In order to remove a pin counter, the pinned model must expend 1 action to rally. 1 rally action removes 1 pin counter. Removal in this case is automatic with no die roll. The removal simply consumes time and energy in the form of the action. A unit cannot have more than 4 pin counters on it. With the exception of defending itself in melee combat, which we discussed in the previous video, a unit cannot perform any other actions until all pin counters are removed. Now, a pinned unit is eligible for cover bonuses, such as being behind the soft and hard cover, as we discussed in the previous video when we gave the example, and receives an additional bonus to their armor stat from all direct fire ranged attacks, so long as they remain pinned behind cover. For example, an additional +1 for soft cover and a +2 for hard cover. The unit is considered to be hunkered down for protection, so this soft cover will protect him because he's scared now that he's got a pin on him. Now let's discuss medkits. Models can purchase medkits before a battle. If self-administered, so your model uses the medkit on themselves instead of another model, this is a free action that can take place immediately. If you administer a medkit to another model, that takes up an action. Now, in case this model has a wound, he uses his medkit. The wound comes off, but instead you replace it with 2 pin counters, which means he's going to have to use some rallies. It's important to mention individual medkits can only be applied to individual wounds. They will not work on a model hit with and wounded multiple times in the same round of combat. Now, if a model receives 2 wounds and has 2 medkits, it may replace both wounds with 4 pin counters, 2 for each wound. But 2 is the maximum number of wounds that can be addressed in a single round of combat. So if you take 3 hits, for example, this person fires, or let's say this person gets really lucky, has a 3 firepower machine gun and just rips you apart, you're done, you're out of action. If there are no medkits available and or the unit has been wounded 3 or more times, mark it as out of action and place it face down. It can no longer take part in the mission until it is healed, so that will require someone else with a medkit to come up to them and perform the medkit healing action. That brings us to the fact that an out-of-action model can be healed by the ally with the medkit before the mission ends. Now this attention represents full medical attention and remedies all wounds, but the model cannot rejoin the action for the duration of that mission. And that's more important if you're doing campaign play and you don't want your guy to go out and you can preserve him for future scenarios. Now if a crew leader or some other multiple wound model has a medkit, they may use it to negate the effects of a wound. So this basically becomes a way to purchase an extra wound on you. So you make your 2 wound model with a medkit. In essence, is a 3 wound model. So if in that case, remove the medkit from the unit's inventory and replace the wound marker with 2 pinned units. So let's say my multiple wound leader, he gets shot, he has a medkit, this will just fly off and he'll take the 2 pins. No further penalties apply. Wounds negated by medkits are always replaced by the 2 pin counters. You can't get around that fact. Applying a medkit to an injured allied model costs 1 action, and the one applying the medkit must be in base-to-base contact with the injured model. So for example, let's say this model is injured. This model has a medkit. He'll make a move action to get base-to-base. Then he'll use an action to apply the medkit. This will come off, and the 2 pin markers will go on. And remember though, a model applying a medkit to itself is a free action that can be done at any time, such as after the wounded model drags itself to the nearest cover. Well, thank you for watching this episode of Learning to Play Zona Alpha. We hope you come back to Miniature Wargaming Labs, and we'll see you next time.